When your husband looks at you like you've failed him, as if your worth depends on the children you can't give, you start to wonder if the real problem isn't your body, but his soul. Stay with me for a moment while I tell you how everything began to fall apart. If this story moves you, don't forget to show some love. Share it, like it, and let someone who needs strength hear it too. My name is Zara Okoye. I'm 33, a Nigerian-American interior designer living in Atlanta. For years, I thought I had a perfect marriage. Malik Townsend, my husband, was the kind of man people admired: sharp suits, perfect smile, smooth talk. Everyone said I was lucky. I used to believe them. But 4 years into our marriage, the tone of his voice began to change. The warmth in his eyes faded into something colder, something I couldn't name at first. It started with little comments. "Maybe you're working too hard," he'd say when we talked about having kids. Then it became sharper. "You're just not built for motherhood, Zara." The first time he called me Barren, we were at dinner. He said it casually, with a smirk, like it was a joke meant only for him. I remember my fork pausing halfway to my mouth. He didn't even notice the silence that followed. I laughed it off that night, but inside I felt a small crack form. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between us grew. Malik started coming home late, claiming he had client dinners or urgent meetings. He'd brush past me without a touch, his cologne fading into a scent of absence. When I reached for his hand one evening, he pulled away, pretending he needed to answer a call. That was when I realized tenderness had turned into polite distance. Still, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals, left him notes, even booked a weekend trip to Savannah. He canceled last minute, saying work was too heavy. I sat alone in the hotel room that night, staring at the empty pillow beside me, wondering when our marriage had turned into a waiting room. Then came the night that changed everything. He walked in close to midnight, his tie loose, his phone still glowing in his hand. I smelled the perfume before he said a word: sweet, expensive, foreign. Not mine. My heart raced, but my face stayed calm. "Rough day?" I asked quietly. He nodded without meeting my eyes, muttered something about being tired, and disappeared into the shower. I stood there, frozen, that unfamiliar scent still hanging in the air. It wasn't just perfume, it was proof. I didn't confront him that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight and cold. Something inside me shifted. The woman who spent years blaming herself stopped doing that. A new feeling began to grow inside me, something sharp, silent, and strong. That was the night I realized my marriage wasn't breaking. It had already broken. Zara sat in the doctor's office, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence until Dr. Imani Reeves entered with a warm smile. "Zara," she said gently, settling across from her. "I have your results." Zara braced herself, heart pounding. For months, Malik had made her believe something was wrong with her, that her body had failed him. Every insult had carved into her until she almost believed it too. But Dr. Reeves' voice was calm and reassuring. "Everything looks perfectly normal. Your tests show no sign of infertility. You're completely healthy and capable of conceiving." For a moment, Zara didn't move. The words hung in the air, soft but heavy. She blinked, trying to understand what they meant. Normal. Healthy. Capable. All this time, Malik had called her barren, made her feel broken. And it was never true. Dr. Reeves touched her hand. "Sometimes couples just need time. Or, sometimes it's not the woman at all." That last part stayed with her like an echo. Not the woman at all. Driving home, Zara kept replaying every cruel word Malik had said. The nights he turned his back to her, the jokes he made about her empty womb. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, but her mind was clear. He had lied. Not just to her, but about her. When Malik came home that evening, she decided to tell him calmly. She wanted to believe there was still space for truth between them. He was standing by the counter, scrolling through his phone, when she said, "I saw Dr. Reeves today. My results came back normal. She said I'm perfectly healthy." Malik froze for a second, then looked up with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh really? Maybe she missed something," he said, his tone sharp. "She didn't," Zara replied softly. "There's nothing wrong with me." He laughed bitterly. "You just can't admit the truth, can you, Zara? Always have to be right." Her stomach tightened. "What truth, Malik? That I'm fine? That you've been lying to me?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he turned it around, saying she was too sensitive, too emotional, too focused on blame. He accused her of making everything about herself. His voice was calm but cutting, like he was rehearsing lines he'd said before. That night, Malik pretended to sleep early. Zara sat in the living room, trying to quiet her thoughts. Around midnight, she heard him whispering on the phone in the hallway. His tone was low but tense. "She still doesn't know," he said. "Just keep it quiet until after the contract dinner." Zara's heart dropped. She stayed completely still, holding her breath so he wouldn't know she was awake. The truth was finally out. It wasn't her body that was hiding something. It was him. And now, she knew she wasn't crazy. She was betrayed. Zara couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, Malik's whisper from that night echoed in her head. "She still doesn't know." Those words replayed over and over until they didn't just haunt her. They pushed her to start digging for the truth. One Sunday morning, while Malik was out meeting a client, Zara sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Her hands trembled slightly, but her heart was steady. She wasn't snooping out of jealousy. She was searching for answers that her husband refused to give. At first, everything looked normal: emails, invoices, work documents. Then she found the credit card statements. Her eyes caught on a repeating charge every month: the Elm Residences, Midtown Atlanta. The amount wasn't small either. It wasn't a one-time stay. It was rent. Her breath hitched. An apartment? In Midtown? Malik already had a home with her. There was no reason to be paying rent somewhere else. Zara printed the statement, tucked it into her purse, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time thinking. The perfume, the late nights, the defensiveness, it all started to connect. She needed to see that place for herself. 2 days later, when Malik mentioned he'd be out late again, Zara put on a pair of jeans, tied her hair into a bun, and drove to the Midtown address. The building was sleek and modern, the kind that offered skyline views and valet parking. She parked a block away, heart pounding, and approached the entrance with a confident smile. "Hi, I'm with Clean and Shine Services," she told the doorman, holding a clipboard she had prepared just for this. Unit 804 requested a quick service before the evening. The man barely looked at her badge before nodding. "Go right up." Her palms were sweating as she stepped into the elevator. The ride felt endless. When the doors opened, she walked down the quiet hallway, stopped in front of 804, and used the master key the doorman had handed her. The door clicked open. Inside, the apartment smelled of vanilla candles and something painfully domestic, warm and lived in. Zara stepped inside slowly. On the couch was a soft pink robe, draped neatly as if it belonged there. On the fridge, she noticed bright-colored drawings: a house, a sun, stick figures holding hands. And in the center, her heart stopped. It was a framed photo. Malik was in it, smiling, holding a little girl with soft brown curls and a dimple just like his. For a long moment, Zara couldn't breathe. The world blurred around her. The man who had called her Barren, the man who had made her believe she was broken, had a child. Tears stung her eyes, but she didn't make a sound. She took out her phone, quietly snapped photos of everything, and left the apartment exactly as she found it. Driving home, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just gripped the steering wheel, numb, while the truth sat heavy in her chest. The lies were deeper than she ever imagined. Zara didn't confront Malik right away. After what she saw in that apartment, she needed proof, something undeniable. She knew Malik would twist her words, call her paranoid, maybe even make her question her own mind again. This time, she wanted facts. So, she hired a private investigator. His name was Theo Briggs, a quiet man in his 40s with calm eyes and a way of speaking that made you trust him. When she met him at a small cafe downtown, she slid the photos she'd taken across the table. "I need to know everything," she said. "Who she is, how long it's been going on, and if he's hiding anything else." Theo nodded once. "Give me a week." Those 7 days felt like a lifetime. Zara went through her daily routine like a ghost: design meetings, client calls, polite smiles. But inside, she was unraveling. Every time Malik kissed her on the cheek or said good morning, she felt sick. The man she'd shared a home with was a stranger. Exactly 1 week later, Theo called. "I have what you asked for. We should meet in person." They met again in the same cafe. Theo opened a brown envelope and laid out photos and documents like puzzle pieces. "Her name is Camille Porter," he said. 29 years old. Event planner. Lives in Midtown Atlanta. Zara's stomach turned. "How long?" Theo's eyes softened. 5 years. Her hands shook as she repeated it. 5 years. Malik and Camille had been together the entire time she'd been married to him. Every anniversary, every "I love you," every promise had been a lie. Theo continued, his voice steady. They have a daughter. She's 3. Zara couldn't speak. Her throat burned. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might pass out. It wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. The same man who called her Barren had fathered a child with another woman and built a whole secret life. Theo slid over another sheet. There's more. The car Camille drives, registered under a company name. But the company doesn't exist. It's a shell business owned by Malik Townsend. Zara stared at the paperwork. Each line, each signature, felt like another stab. Malik hadn't just cheated. He'd stolen from her, using their shared income to fund another household. Theo leaned back quietly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Townsend. I know this isn't easy. She nodded, swallowing hard. No, it's not. But it's necessary. When she drove home that evening, the city lights blurred through her tears. She thought about the years she spent praying for a child, crying over doctor visits, begging Malik to hold her hand. And all that time, he was holding someone else's. That night, as Malik sat beside her on the couch, pretending to watch TV, Zara looked at him differently. Not with sadness anymore, but with cold clarity. She knew what he'd done, and now she had proof. The man beside her had built his happiness on her pain, and she was done being silent. Zara didn't scream. She didn't throw things or demand answers. The night Theo handed her the proof, she sat quietly in her car and stared at the city lights flickering through the windshield. For the first time, she saw everything clearly. The lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, it all connected. Malik had built a second life on her silence. But that silence was about to end. The next morning, she called her old college friend, Aaliyah Moore, a sharp and confident attorney. They hadn't spoken in months, but when Zara's voice trembled over the phone, Aaliyah didn't hesitate. Come to my office, she said. We'll talk. Aaliyah listened carefully as Zara told her everything. About the affair, the apartment, the child, the fake business. When Zara finished, Aaliyah leaned back in her chair, eyes firm but kind. You need to protect yourself, she said. Under Georgia law, infidelity matters. If you can prove it, you're entitled to a fair division of assets, and possibly more. Zara felt her first breath of control in weeks. Proof. She already had that. Aaliyah helped her make a list of everything to collect. Photos, bank records, lease documents, business filings, and transaction histories. For the next several days, Zara moved carefully, quietly. She scanned files, copied statements, and stored them on a hidden flash drive. Every piece of paper she gathered was another weapon, another step toward freedom. She acted normal at home. Malik didn't suspect a thing. He still kissed her cheek in the mornings and talked about work, pretending to be the perfect husband. Zara matched his performance with calm smiles and gentle nods. Inside, she was studying him, his routines, his meetings, his patterns. One evening, while scrolling through his emails on his tablet, she found it, a message about an upcoming luxury dinner at a high-end hotel downtown. It was a big event to celebrate a client contract worth millions. Malik had personally organized it. His name was all over the guest list, and right below it, under colleagues, was Camille Porter. Zara's pulse slowed. That was it. The stage. The moment. She didn't want to fight behind closed doors anymore. She wanted the truth to find its way into the same polished rooms where Malik bragged about his success. The same world that admired his charm would finally see what he truly was. That night, as Malik talked over dinner about his career milestones, Zara only smiled. Her mind was already planning every detail, the timing, the evidence, and the envelope that would end it all. She imagined his face when the truth unfolded, not with shouting or chaos, but with calm precision. He would never see it coming. While Malik dreamed about contracts and deals, Zara was building something far more powerful, a quiet, devastating storm wrapped in grace. And when it arrived, it wouldn't just ruin his image. It would free her completely. Zara spent the next few weeks moving with quiet precision. Every moment of her day was planned, every word she spoke measured. Malik thought she was calm because their marriage was settling again, but in truth, she was preparing for his downfall. She worked late at her studio, pretending to focus on design projects. But instead of color palettes and sketches, her desk was covered in files, photographs, and notes. Each piece of evidence was carefully arranged like art, proof of his betrayal captured in perfect order. Theo had come through once more, securing the final piece she needed, a paternity test linking Malik to the little girl. When Zara saw the document, she didn't cry. Her emotions were gone now, replaced by something steady and cold. Late at night, when the house was quiet, She sat at her laptop drafting the letter that would change everything. It began simply, "To the esteemed guests of Mr. and Mrs. Townsend." She wanted it to sound polite, almost formal. There would be no anger, no rage, only truth delivered with elegance. She wrote about Malik's lies, about how he paraded himself as a devoted husband while secretly keeping another family. She included the cruel irony of him calling his wife Barren while fathering a child elsewhere. Every sentence was calm, factual, impossible to twist. She attached copies of the photos. Malik and Camille smiling in front of the Midtown apartment. Malik carrying their daughter, the birth certificate, the paternity test results. She printed everything on thick, ivory paper, placed it neatly in envelopes, and sealed each one with care. When she was done, she looked at the small stack on her table. Each envelope was a piece of justice, silent but powerful. As the night of the dinner approached, Zara planned every detail. Malik had no idea she even knew about the event. He mentioned it over breakfast one morning, bragging about the clients he would impress. She smiled, poured his coffee, and said softly, "I hope it's unforgettable." The evening arrived warm and glittering. The luxury hotel shimmered with gold light, filled with laughter and expensive perfume. Zara arrived early, her emerald green gown catching the light like a blade. She looked composed, radiant even. No one recognized her as she walked through the lobby with quiet confidence. She carried a small clutch filled with the envelopes. The maitre d' greeted her politely, assuming she was part of the planning team. "Just placing some personal notes for the guests," she said with an easy smile. He nodded and led her to the long dining table, polished and perfect, waiting for its guests. One by one, Zara set an envelope on each plate, her movements smooth and deliberate. Her heart didn't race. If anything, it slowed, steady and sure. When the last one was placed, she stepped back, taking in the sight. Every secret Malik had buried now sat in plain view, sealed and waiting to explode. Without a word, Zara turned, her emerald gown trailing behind her, and walked out into the night, leaving truth at every seat. The night of the dinner unfolded like a scene from a movie, lavish, polished, and full of pretense. The grand ballroom of the hotel glittered under chandeliers, the air thick with the sound of laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. Malik Townsend was in his element. He moved through the crowd with his usual charm, shaking hands, cracking jokes, soaking up admiration. He looked like the picture of success. No one could have guessed that his world was seconds away from falling apart. Zara sat quietly at the bar, hidden among the evening crowd. Her emerald gown shimmered faintly under the golden lights, but her face remained unreadable. From her seat, she could see everything. The table set with precision, the wine poured, the smiles exchanged. The envelope set neatly on each guest's plate, still sealed, innocent-looking. The maitre d' approached the table, speaking softly to Malik before beginning to distribute the envelopes. Zara watched him move from guest to guest, setting one before each person. For a moment, nothing happened. The chatter continued. Malik was laughing loudly with a client, completely unaware. Then, the first rustle of paper broke the air. Someone opened their envelope. Then another. Within seconds, the sound spread, soft tearing, curious murmurs, the kind of silence that follows shock. Zara saw heads bend over the table, eyes scanning the printed pages, faces freezing mid-smile. Gasps began to ripple through the room like a slow-moving wave. One woman covered her mouth. Another man frowned deeply, whispering something to his wife. The laughter died completely. Only the faint sound of classical music filled the tension. Zara could see Camille now, sitting just 2 seats away from Malik, dressed elegantly, her confidence fading fast. She had an envelope too. When she opened it, her hand trembled. The wine glass slipped from her grip, shattering against the floor. Heads turned. Malik's boss stood abruptly, his face pale as snow. He looked at Malik like he'd just seen a ghost. Across the table, Malik was still trying to understand what was happening. He snatched up his own envelope, ripped it open, and began reading. His expression changed in slow motion, confusion, disbelief, then horror. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. The noise of the crowd grew as whispers turned into low voices, all eyes fixed on him. Zara took a calm sip of her wine, her heart steady. The truth was finally louder than his lies. Malik pushed back his chair, eyes scanning the room. When he saw her at the bar, realization struck. "Zara!" he shouted, his voice echoing across the hall. Heads turned. Cameras flashed. But she didn't move. She placed her wine glass down, stood gracefully, and walked toward the exit. Malik called her name again, louder this time, desperate. She never turned around. As the doors closed behind her, the sound of chaos filled the ballroom, her husband's empire collapsing under the weight of his own deceit. The next morning, Atlanta woke up to gossip that spread like wildfire through Malik's firm. By 9 o'clock, everyone had seen the photos. Clients forwarded the letter. Executives whispered behind closed doors. The man who once bragged about discipline and image was now a walking scandal. When Malik arrived at the office, heads turned but no one spoke. His boss, Mr. Langford, called him in immediately. The meeting was short and brutal. "Effective immediately," he said flatly. "You're suspended pending investigation for ethical violations." The word ethical stung because it was the one thing Malik used to boast about most. He tried to explain, said it was a misunderstanding, that his private life was being twisted. But the firm's reputation mattered more than his excuses. Security escorted him out within the hour. The man who had built his identity on control now looked like he couldn't even control his own story. Meanwhile, Camille had seen enough. The letter Zara wrote had reached her too. She realized Malik had never divorced his wife, never planned to. The man she thought loved her had used her as much as he'd used everyone else. Her final message to him was only 2 words: "Don't call." Then she blocked his number. For the first time in years, Malik was truly alone. Zara, on the other hand, woke up calm. The storm had passed, and she was still standing. She went to Aaliyah's office that afternoon with her flash drive and folder of documents. "Let's file," she said simply. Aaliyah nodded, already prepared. Together, they filed for divorce, including every piece of evidence: photos, financial records, and the paternity test. Legally, the case was airtight. Emotionally, it was closure. 2 days later, Malik showed up at Zara's doorstep. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. His eyes red, his tie loose, the confidence drained out of him. "Zara," he began softly, "please. I made mistakes, but it wasn't what you think. I was under pressure. The deal, the clients, the stress, it got to me." She stood in the doorway, silent. He tried again, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just got lost. You know how it is. You were so distant, and Camille, she was just there." Zara almost laughed. "So, it was stress? Or temptation?" He swallowed hard, not answering. His words fell apart under the weight of his guilt. Finally, she stepped closer, her tone calm and final. "You called me barren, Malik," she said quietly. "But I was never barren. You were just empty." His lips parted, but no sound came out. Zara closed the door gently, not slamming it, just ending it. The click of the lock sounded like peace. Inside her living room, the sunlight poured through the windows, warm and golden. For the first time in years, Zara felt free, no longer waiting for apologies or explanations. The chapter was closed. The silence that followed didn't feel lonely. It felt like power. Months passed before the divorce papers were finally signed. When the court session ended, Zara sat still for a long moment, letting the reality settle in. It was over. The man who had once promised forever was now just a name on a legal document. Her lawyer, Aaliyah, gave her a small smile and squeezed her hand. "You did it," she said softly. "You're free." Freedom, Zara realized, wasn't loud. It didn't come with fireworks or shouting. It came with quiet relief, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. The settlement was fair. Malik had fought hard, but in the end, truth had a way of cutting through everything. Zara received half of his assets and full ownership of their home. The same home where she had once cried, doubted herself, and begged for love. Now it was hers alone. The first thing she did was call a painter. The beige walls that once felt suffocating were soon covered with warm yellows, soft greens, and touches of gold. She replaced the heavy curtains Malik had chosen with airy white ones that let the sunlight pour in. Every stroke of paint felt like erasing a memory. The dining table where Malik had insulted her became a space for laughter again. The bedroom, once filled with cold silences, now felt peaceful. Zara filled it with her own designs, bright cushions, gentle light, and a quiet scent of lavender. For the first time in years, she could breathe in her own home. One morning, she found herself driving to Dr. Amani Reeves' clinic again. Not out of fear this time, but out of gratitude. When she walked in, Dr. Reeves looked up and smiled warmly. "Zara," she said, "you look different. Lighter." Zara laughed softly. "I think I am." They sat down together, not as doctor and patient, but as 2 women who understood life's strange turns. Dr. Reeves asked if she wanted to retest her fertility, but Zara shook her head. "I didn't come for that," she said. "I just wanted to say thank you for telling me the truth when I needed it most." The doctor's eyes softened. "You're free now, Zara. That's the healthiest thing of all." Those words lingered in the room, gentle and powerful. On her drive home, the sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in colors that felt almost new. She turned up the music and rolled down her windows, feeling the wind on her face. It wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of her own life. Later that evening, Zara made herself a cup of tea and stood by her window, watching the lights flicker across the city. For the first time in years, she smiled, a full, honest smile that reached her eyes. Revenge, she realized, had never been about breaking him. It was about rebuilding herself. And in that calm, golden moment, freedom, though costly, had never tasted so sweet. A year had passed, and life had unfolded quietly, but beautifully for Zara Okoye. The woman who once felt invisible now stood in a sunlit studio in Midtown Atlanta, surrounded by her own creations. Warm tones, lush plants, and designs that spoke of healing. The gold sign above the entrance read Root and Bloom Interiors. It was more than a name, it was her story. The grand opening was simple but elegant. Soft jazz played in the background, and guests wandered through the space, admiring her work. Every design in the studio told a piece of her journey, from pain to peace, from breaking to rebuilding. She had poured herself into this business, not for Malik, not for revenge, but for her own rebirth. As the evening flowed, she found herself standing near the refreshments table, speaking with a group of potential clients. That was when she met Jordan Akeem. He was an architect, tall, calm, with kind eyes that carried both intelligence and empathy. He had collaborated with several designers in the city, and one of Zara's former clients had mentioned her new firm to him. "I've heard about your work," he said, offering his hand with a warm smile. "Root and Bloom, it's such a meaningful name. There's a story behind it, isn't there?" Zara smiled, a soft one that reached her eyes. "There is," she said. "It's about starting over. About growing again, even after being torn apart." He nodded, not prying, not asking for details. He didn't treat her story like gossip or tragedy, just truth. That quiet respect felt rare and unexpectedly comforting. They began talking about design concepts, blending architecture with emotional storytelling, how spaces could make people feel safe again. With every word, Zara felt something gentle stir in her. Hope, not romance yet, but something like trust returning. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, Zara stood alone in her studio, looking around at what she had built from her own pain. The soft hum of the city outside felt like applause. She thought back to that night, the dinner, the envelopes, the truth exploding across the room. It had once felt like the end of her world. But now, standing here, she realized it had only been the beginning. That night, she hadn't just exposed Malik, she had freed herself. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass window, stronger, wiser, whole. She whispered softly, "I don't need closure. I gave it to myself the moment I walked away." Outside, the city lights shimmered like a promise. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers again, uncontrolled, unbroken, and full of new beginnings. Zara turned off the lights, locked her studio door, and stepped into the cool night air. A soft smile curved her lips as she whispered to herself, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's rebirth." And with that, she walked forward, rooted, blooming, and finally free. Do you think Zara made the right choice by walking away and rebuilding her life? Or should she have given Malik another chance after everything that happened? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you think. And if you enjoy powerful stories of strength and second chances, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.